Field trips were supposed to be educational, not life-threatening. Nora Kimball had that thought approximately 3 seconds before everything exploded. She'd been working on Station Meridian 8 for 6 months now, running what the bureaucrats called cross-species youth enrichment programs, and what she called keeping alien kids from destroying each other. The job description had promised cultural exchange facilitation. Reality had delivered herding apex predators through museums while they tried to eat the exhibits. Today's group was a mixed bag. 3 Vrakken cubs, scaly, spiked, prone to breathing fire when excited. 2 Krell hatchlings, insectoid, way too many legs, surprisingly polite. And a Thalorian juvenile, crystalline, telepathic, absolutely no concept of personal space. They were touring the ruins of Kethvar, an ancient cultural heritage site that was 90% dusty rocks and 10% historically significant dusty rocks. "Miss Nora," one of the Vrakken cubs chirped, "why are these rocks important?" "Because they're old, Spike." She'd given up on the cubs' actual names after the first week. They'd responded better to Earth nicknames anyway. "But all rocks are old. These ones are historically old. There's a difference." "I do not understand the difference." "Neither do I, buddy. But we're here for another hour, so let's pretend." The Krell hatchling, she'd been calling him Legs, raised a manipulator. "Teacher Nora, may I touch the artifact?" "Which artifact?" "The large stone with inscriptions." "Legs, that's a support pillar. If you touch it, the ceiling falls down." "Ah, thank you for the clarification." Nora checked her datapad. 1 hour left. She could survive 1 hour. She'd survived worse. Chicago public schools had prepared her for anything, including... The explosion came from the ruins entrance. No warning. Just sudden, catastrophic violence. The ancient archway disintegrated in a bloom of fire and shrapnel. Stone fragments became projectiles. The air filled with smoke and screaming. Nora's brain processed several things simultaneously. 1. Terrorist attack. Probably the separatist faction that had been making threats. 2. The cubs were directly in the blast path. 3. She was between them and the door. 4. This was going to hurt. She didn't think. Thinking took time. Instead, she threw herself backward, arms spread wide, body becoming a shield between the cubs and the explosion. The impact felt like getting hit by a truck made of smaller, sharper trucks. Shrapnel punched through her jacket, her shirt, her skin. Hot metal embedded in her back, her side, her shoulder. Pain arrived late, after the damage was already done. She hit the ground hard, tasted copper, heard ringing. Through the smoke she saw the cubs, huddled behind her, scared but intact. "Stay down," she managed. "Don't move." Security forces arrived. She heard their boots, their shouted commands. The cubs were making distressed sounds, chirping and clicking and humming with panic. One of them, Spike, she thought, pressed against her side. Warm, alive. Worth it, she thought. Then everything went black. When Nora woke up, she expected a medical bay, maybe some pain medication, maybe a lecture about proper evacuation procedures. What she got was the entire Galactic Council staring at her like she'd just declared war on physics. "Oh," she said. "This is bad." Her vision swam into focus slowly. Medical bay, yes. Standard station layout. Regeneration field humming somewhere overhead. The smell of antiseptic and recycled air. And people. So many people. Aliens of every species imaginable, packed into a space that should hold maybe 6 beings comfortably. Council representatives in formal robes. Station security in tactical gear. Religious figures in ceremonial dress. Academic researchers clutching datapads. All staring at her. "Did I die?" Nora asked. "Is this bureaucratic hell?" The council representative, a Vexian with too many eyes and not enough sense of personal boundaries, stepped forward. "You have been unconscious for 3 standard rotations. We have been maintaining vigil." "Vigil?" Nora tried to sit up. Failed. Everything hurt. "I got hit by some shrapnel. It happens." The silence that followed could have pressurized a hull breach. "It happens?" someone repeated. "Yeah, Wrong place, wrong time, terrorist attack. I've seen the security briefings. Happens every few months. She squinted at the crowd. Why are you all in my room? The station doctor, a long-suffering Kryn named Vex who'd already treated Nora twice for excessive risk-taking, made a sound of pure exasperation. She keeps trying to get up and check on the cubs. I've had to sedate her twice. They're kids, Nora protested. Someone needs to make sure they're okay. More staring. She was getting really tired of the staring. The cubs are fine, Vex said flatly. They are also here. They have refused to leave. Nora turned her head, carefully because everything still hurt, and saw them. Spike, Legs, Shimmer, and the others, huddled in a corner of the medical bay, making soft protective sounds. Hey guys, she said. You okay? Collective chirping of affirmation. Good. That's good. Then one of the Vrakken parents stepped forward. Nora had met the cubs' parents once during orientation. They were terrifying. 9 feet of scaled muscle and accumulated violence. Battle-scarred warriors who'd conquered 17 worlds before breakfast. This one, Warlord Krell, she remembered, knelt beside her bed. A Vrakken warlord, kneeling. You took death for our young, Krell said, his voice like grinding stone. We have no words for such honor. Nora blinked. I took shrapnel. There's a difference. You placed your body between our offspring and destruction. Yeah, because they were about to get blown up. That's just basic safety protocol? The other parents approached. Krell warriors, Thalorian matriarchs, all of them looking at her like she'd done something impossible. This is not protocol, a Krell parent said. This is sacrifice. It's really not. I just didn't move fast enough to get out of the way. You moved toward the danger, Vex corrected. I reviewed the footage. You threw yourself backward, deliberately. To cover the cubs, yeah. Where else was I supposed to go? More silence. More staring. Nora was starting to suspect she'd missed something important. Xenobiologist Nora materialized, literally, since they were a gaseous being, and activated a holographic projector. Perhaps, Nora said. A visual demonstration will help. The footage played in slow motion. Nora watched herself teaching the cubs about historically significant rocks. Watched the explosion bloom at the entrance. Watched herself turn, arms spreading, body becoming a shield. Watched shrapnel punch through her back as the cubs cowered behind her. Yeah, she said quietly. That looks about right. Adrenaline's wild. The assembled aliens were reacting like they were watching religious footage. Council members taking frantic notes. The Thalorian delegation started chanting. Why are they chanting? Nora asked. They believe you have demonstrated the ultimate proof of sapience, Nora explained. Willingness to sacrifice for the young of other species. It's called not being a monster? An academic researcher, some species Nora didn't recognize, pushed forward. You do not understand. No species does this. Protection of one's own young is universal. Protection of other species' young, especially apex predators that could theoretically harm you? Unprecedented. They're 3 years old. They're not going to harm anyone. They are apex predators. They're children. The Krell parent approached Nora's bed. My species has a death debt tradition. You saved my son. I am bound to you until the debt is repaid. That's really not necessary. I am bound, the Krell repeated firmly. As am I, Krell added. And I, said the Thalorian matriarch. One by one, every parent in the room echoed the declaration. Nora looked at Dr. Vex. Can you sedate me again? No. Please? You need to face this. I'd rather not. Then, the religious delegation stepped forward. A group of Thalorians in ceremonial robes, crystals humming with what Nora assumed was spiritual significance. We wish to discuss the prophecy of the Selfless One, their leader announced. Nora stared at them, looked at Vex, back at the religious delegation. The prophecy of the what now? The Selfless One. Who would come from the void beyond? Who would demonstrate the ultimate act? Sacrifice for the young of other bloodlines? Who would prove that sapience transcends species? I'm from Ohio, not the void beyond. Ohio? The religious leader consulted a datapad. Our records show no planet named Ohio. It's a state. On Earth. We have, decent theme parks. The selfless one would be humble, another priest said reverently, deflecting their own divinity. I'm not deflecting anything. I'm just explaining basic geography. Vex patted her shoulder. Stop talking. You're making it worse. How am I making it worse? You keep saying things that make you sound more prophetic. Nora closed her eyes, took a breath, regretted it because her ribs hurt. Okay, she said. Let me be very clear. I am not a prophet. I am not divine. I am not fulfilling any prophecies. I'm a xenobiologist who panicked when kids were in danger. That's it. That's the whole story. The religious delegation looked at each other. She denies her nature, one whispered. As foretold. That's not what I'm doing. Perhaps, the council representative suggested, we should let her rest. Yes, Vex agreed. Everyone out, now. The crowd reluctantly dispersed. The cubs refused to leave, so Vex allowed them to stay. Because they're less disruptive than the religious delegation. As the door closed, Nora heard one of the priests say, "We must prepare the ceremony of acknowledgement." She looked at Vex. I hate everything about this. I know. Can I go back to being unconscious? Medically inadvisable. Damn. Spike approached the bed, chirping softly. Nora reached out, carefully, and scratched behind his ear ridge. You guys okay? She asked again. Collective chirps of affirmation. And something else. Gratitude, maybe. Fierce, protective loyalty. Good, Nora said. That's all that matters. Outside her room, she could hear arguing. Religious leaders and council representatives and parents all talking over each other about prophecies and death debts and unprecedented behavioral patterns. This is going to be a whole thing, isn't it? Nora asked. Yes, Vex said. A very large thing. Great. Love that for me. But the cubs were safe. That's what she kept coming back to. They were alive, unharmed, chirping softly in the corner of her medical bay. Worth it, she thought again. Even if she'd apparently started 6 religions by accident. 2 days later, Nora was still stuck in medical and deeply regretting surviving. Not because of the injuries. Those were healing fine, thanks to alien medical technology that made Earth hospitals look like medieval barber shops. No, she regretted surviving because apparently staying alive meant dealing with an endless parade of visitors who all wanted to understand her sacrifice. The Thalorians saw it as religious martyrdom. They kept bringing offerings, crystals that hummed with spiritual energy, scrolls written in languages she couldn't read, and once, inexplicably, a live plant that screamed when touched. The Vrakken interpreted everything through warrior culture. Blood debt. Honor unto death. Krell had actually asked if she wanted him to conquer a planet in her name. That's really not necessary, Nora had said. But I am bound, Krell insisted. Bound to what? Not conquering planets on my behalf? The Krell saw it as pack bonding through shared mortality, which somehow meant they now considered her part of their collective consciousness. She'd woken up yesterday to find 3 Krell standing perfectly still around her bed, just observing. Like sleep-deprived sentinels made of chitin and poor boundaries. Every visitor wanted the same thing, an explanation. Why did you do it? They asked. What compelled you? I didn't want the kids to get hurt, Nora repeated for the 83rd time. Yes, the protective override. A Vexian academic clutched their datapad excitedly. Tell us more about this programming. It's not programming. It's just being a decent person. But what biological mechanism triggers this behavior? The mechanism is called not being a sociopath. The academic made rapid notes. Fascinating. A self-regulatory social framework preventing antisocial impulses. Nora looked at Dr. Vex, who was trying very hard not to laugh. Are they always like this? Academics? Yes. You've become their favorite research subject. Papers were being published. Actual academic papers, with titles like Human Sacrificial Behavior, Cross-Species Application of Parental Override, and Protective Instinct Manifestation in Homo sapiens During Crisis Events. Nora had read one. It was terrible. The methodology was sound, but the conclusions were wildly off base. They'd analyzed her actions like she was a complex algorithm instead of a person who'd panicked and done something stupid. The cubs, meanwhile, refused to leave. Station security had tried to remove them. Gently, because nobody wanted to upset the offspring of warrior species. The cubs had chirped their distress. Their parents had said no. Firmly, very firmly, with implications of violence if anyone tried again. Now Nora had 12 apex predators camped outside her medical bay. Cubs inside with her. Parents forming a protective perimeter in the hallway. Station personnel were terrified to walk past. They'd started taking alternate routes, adding 15 minutes to their commutes just to avoid the humans' guards. Nora found this hilarious. You realize everyone's afraid of you now, right? Vex said. Me? I'm 5'4" and made of squishy human parts. You're 5'4" and protected by 9-foot warriors who've publicly sworn death debts to you. That's their problem, not mine. That's everybody's problem. The door chimed. Nora groaned. If that's another religious delegation? It's Ambassador Reeves. Vex checked the monitor. Earth's ambassador. Oh. That was probably worse. Ambassador Harriet Reeves entered looking like she'd aged 10 years in 3 days. Her hair was disheveled. Her formal attire was rumpled. She had the expression of someone who'd been explaining the same thing over and over to increasingly confused aliens and was about to snap. Nora, she said without preamble. Do you have any idea what you've done? Survived an explosion? Nora offered. You've started 6 new religions and collapsed 2 existing ones. Silence. I'm sorry, what? Reeves sat down heavily. The Thalorians have declared you the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy. The Vexians created a new religion based on your actions. They're calling it the path of selfless action. 2 death cult religions have completely fallen apart because their entire belief system was based on the idea that sacrifice for non-kin was impossible, and you just proved them wrong. How is that my fault? Because you demonstrated behavior that shouldn't exist, Spike chirped from his corner. Nora reached out to reassure him without thinking. See? Reeves gestured. You're doing it again. Automatic protective response to distressed young. Any young. Even apex predators that could theoretically rip you apart. They're 3. They're not ripping anyone apart. That's not the point. The point is... Reeves pulled up her datapad, started scrolling. We have 3,000 pilgrims in the docking queue. They want to witness the Selfless one. Station commander is having a breakdown. The religious leaders are demanding access to you. The parents have formed what is essentially a warrior cult around your medical bay. And the economic markets are crashing because nobody knows if death debt obligations are tradable commodities. Nora processed this. So what you're saying is, my medical leave has become a diplomatic incident. Your medical leave has become a galactic incident. Great. Love that for me. Could you maybe take this seriously? I'm taking it exactly as seriously as it deserves, which is not at all. Nora gestured at her injuries. I got hit by shrapnel. That's it. I'm not a prophet. I'm not fulfilling any destinies. I'm just a person who didn't want kids to die. And that, Reeves said, is what's breaking everyone's understanding of biology and culture and religion. Before Nora could respond, the door chimed again. A Thalorian priest entered, crystals humming with purpose. We must prepare you for the ceremony of acknowledgement. What ceremony? Nora asked. Where you accept your role as spiritual guide to the new age. Nora looked at Vex. I'm going to need actual painkillers for this. Already prescribed, Vex said. Maximum dosage. The council session was held in the Grand Chamber, a space designed to accommodate 80 different species and make them all feel equally important. Nora was brought in against medical advice, still healing, heavily medicated, and deeply annoyed. The chamber was packed. Representatives from every major species, religious leaders, academic researchers, even some economic analysts who looked like they hadn't slept in days. She sat in what they called the supplicant's chair, which was deeply uncomfortable and probably intentional. Council leader Voth, an ancient being whose species Nora still couldn't identify, leaned forward. Explain the mechanism that compelled your sacrifice. There were kids about to get hurt. I moved. That's it. But the risk to your survival was calculated at 83%. Yeah, and? The risk to them was 100%. Shocked silence rippled through the chamber. You calculated this? Someone asked. No, I just reacted. This is normal human stuff. Mora materialized, displaying data. Research indicates humans routinely risk personal safety for unrelated juveniles. Teachers, caregivers, even complete strangers. The pattern is consistent across cultures and time periods. This is impossible, a council member insisted. The genetic imperative would prevent such disadvantageous behavior. Look, Nora said, trying to stay patient through the medication haze. On Earth, we have like a million stories about people jumping into rivers to save random kids, running into burning buildings, throwing themselves in front of vehicles. It's not special. It's just what you do. A mathematician presented holographic models. The behavior is evolutionarily disadvantageous. It reduces individual survival probability for no genetic benefit. Yeah, well, we evolved anyway. Nora shrugged. Checkmate, evolution. More silence, more frantic note-taking. Then a Krell representative asked quietly, if this is common human behavior, how many humans are currently working with alien young throughout the galaxy? The chamber went absolutely still. Someone pulled up the numbers. The holographic display showed facilities across council space, education centers, childcare programs, youth enrichment services. 15,342 humans in positions involving alien juveniles. Oh no, Council Leader Voth whispered. What? Nora asked. What's wrong? Reeves, standing at the back, closed her eyes. They've just realized that if you're typical, there are 15,000 humans who would do exactly what you did. Understanding dawned slowly. 15,000 humans, all with the same protective instinct, all working with alien young, all potentially willing to sacrifice themselves for children that weren't their species. This changes everything, Voth said. Nora wanted to argue, wanted to explain that this was normal, that this was basic, that any decent person would do the same. But looking at their faces, the shock, the awe, the fear, she realized they genuinely didn't understand. They'd never encountered a species that protected everyone's children, not just their own, everyone's. We need to review every human placement, someone said. We need to understand the full implications. The religious ramifications alone. The economic restructuring required. The chamber erupted into chaos. Nora sat in her uncomfortable chair, medicated and exhausted, wondering how protecting some kids from an explosion had somehow broken galactic civilization. Spike was gonna love this story when he was older. The emergency data analysis began 6 hours after the council session. Researchers pulled records from every station, outpost, and facility that employed human staff. The focus: any position involving alien juveniles. Education, childcare, youth services, coaching, mentorship. What they found broke their understanding of biology. Pattern after pattern, incident after incident. Humans putting themselves at risk for alien children. A human teacher on Station Kepler 9 had physically shielded her students during a meteor strike. Took the impact herself. Survived, barely. The students, 12 different species, were fine. A human caregiver on Outpost Meridian 3 had refused to evacuate during a hull breach until every single charge was accounted for, including the Thalorian juvenile who was telepathically broadcasting terror so intensely it was making other species flee. She'd carried him out herself. A human athletic coach had jumped in front of a Vrakken adolescent during a training accident. The equipment malfunction would have killed the student. Instead, it broke the coach's leg in 3 places. He'd apparently said, "Better me than the kid," while waiting for medical. Every facility, every station, every human working with young. Same pattern. Academic observers were having collective breakdowns. Everything we understood about cross-species behavior is wrong, one researcher announced to anyone who would listen. The entire field needs to be rebuilt from scratch. Religious leaders were panicking. The prophecies never mentioned there would be thousands of selfless ones, a Thalorian priest wailed. How do we build temples for 15,000 prophets? The economic analysts were worst of all. If humans will protect any young at personal cost, then all our liability insurance calculations are fundamentally flawed, one economist explained, staring at projections with visible horror. The risk assessment models don't account for deliberate self-sacrifice. Nora listened to all this from her medical bed, still surrounded by apex predators who refused to leave. "You're telling me," she said slowly, "that humans being decent to kids is breaking galactic civilization?" Ambassador Reeves nodded wearily. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And yet, here we are." Within 6 hours of the data release, 15 species had changed their hiring policies. 10 species immediately requested more human childcare workers. Applications flooded Earth's diplomatic channels. Offers of hazard pay, housing stipends, full medical coverage. One species offered to build an entire human settlement if Earth would send 500 teachers. 5 species requested fewer humans. Too disruptive to existing social structures. The protective behavior was causing cultural ripples they weren't prepared to handle. Emergency council sessions ran around the clock. Are humans too protective to be safe around vulnerable young? One faction argued. Humans are the only species safe to work with vulnerable young, another faction countered. Every other species has. Species preference bias. Humans protect everyone's children. The debates got heated. Alliances formed and collapsed. Economic treaties were rewritten. 3 formal protests were filed with the Council regarding human interference in traditional child-rearing practices. Meanwhile, the cubs' parents made a formal request. All of them, together, in traditional ceremonial dress. They wanted Nora to become permanent guardian of their offspring. "We cannot trust our young to anyone who would not die for them," Warlord Krell explained. Nora stared at them. "That's a really high bar. You have proven you meet it." "By accident. I didn't plan to get hit by shrapnel." "Irrelevant. You acted on instinct. Instinct reveals true nature." Other species started making similar requests. The Krell wanted humans to oversee their hatchling pools. The Thalorians requested human meditation guides for their crystalline youth. Even the Vexians, notoriously xenophobic, asked if humans could help with their adolescent integration programs. Station Commander Vex received 43 transfer requests in one day, all for human staff, all to youth-related positions, all offering hazard pay increases between 30 and 60%. "This is insane," Vex told Nora during a medical check. "Tell me about it." "You broke the station's bureaucratic system. We don't have forms for this." "Make new forms?" "I'd rather not." Nora was still healing, still in medical, still trying to understand how protecting some kids had cascaded into galactic chaos. The cubs brought her gifts. Food from their home worlds. Toys they'd made in art class. And, once, pieces of the destroyed terrorist equipment as trophies. "You guys know I'm not actually your mom, right?" Nora asked, as Spike proudly presented her with a chunk of melted metal. Collective chirping sounds of disagreement. "I'm your teacher." More disagreement chirps. "Your friend?" Chirps that clearly meant also mom. "This is going to be a whole thing, isn't it?" Affirmative chirps. Then security brought in the terrorist, the one who'd planted the bomb, who'd nearly killed 12 juveniles and succeeded in hospitality injuring their human teacher. The parents wanted permission to enact traditional justice, which, from what Nora understood, involved significantly more violence than the council typically allowed. The terrorist was brought to the medical bay in restraints, surrounded by guards, facing a room full of apex predators who had very strong opinions about people who endangered children. He took one look at Nora, still bandaged, still healing, surrounded by cubs chirping protectively, and parents radiating barely contained fury, and made a decision. "I surrender to the human." he said quickly. Only the human. Security paused. The parents growled. Literally growled. You don't get to choose, Krell began. Galactic law permits supplicant's choice, the terrorist interrupted. I claim protection under the humans. Authority. Everyone turned to Nora. She blinked. I don't have authority. You have death debts from 12 apex predators, the terrorist said. That is authority. That's not how. Nora stopped, looked at the parents. Is that how it works? Technically, Krell admitted grudgingly. If he surrenders to you specifically, he's under your protection. And if I say no? Traditional justice. Nora looked at the terrorist. Young, maybe 20 in human years, scared out of his mind. Had made a terrible choice and now faced consequences he clearly hadn't thought through. Why'd you do it? She asked. Plant the bomb. He swallowed. I believed the rhetoric. About the council. About how they're destroying our culture. I thought making a statement would help. You nearly killed children. I know. His voice cracked. I didn't think anyone would actually be there. The intelligence said the site would be empty. I never wanted. He looked at the cubs. I didn't mean for them to get hurt. Silence. Then Nora sighed. Traditional justice seems excessive. Give him to the council. Let them handle it properly. Trial, sentencing, the whole process. The parents looked disappointed. The terrorist looked relieved. Security took him away. You showed mercy, Krell observed. I showed common sense. Killing him doesn't undo what happened. He endangered our young. And he'll face consequences. Legal ones. Not murder. Krell studied her. Your species is strange. Yeah, we get that a lot. That night, Ambassador Reeves requested a private meeting. Just Nora, Reeves, Council Leader Voth, and xenobiologist Mora. We need to tell them, Reeves said without preamble. Tell us what? Voth asked. Reeves pulled up Earth data, historical records, anthropological studies, behavioral analyses. She showed humanity's track record of adopting other species, dogs from wolves, cats from wildcats, horses, cattle, chickens. Literal apex predators turned into companions. She showed the human tendency to protect anything small, young, or vulnerable, even things that could be dangerous. She showed humanity's bizarre habit of forming emotional bonds with non-living things. Robots, ships, rocks that looked vaguely face-like. Humans will protect literally anything they've decided deserves protection, Reeves explained. It's not logical. It's not strategic. It's just who we are. Mora swirled thoughtfully. This explains the caregiving patterns. But the self-sacrifice component is harder to explain, Reeves admitted. Best theory? We evolved in groups, tight-knit communities where protecting the next generation wasn't optional. It was survival. And somewhere along the way, we stopped distinguishing between our kids and kids in general. Also, we're stubborn, Nora added from her bed. And we hate bullies. And we really, really don't like seeing kids get hurt. It's visceral. Makes us angry. Voth leaned forward. Your species will endanger itself for unrelated young of potentially hostile species. They're not hostile, Nora said. They're scared. There's a difference. Long silence. You realize this changes everything? Voth asked. How? Mora pulled up projections. Complex models showing demographic shifts, cultural integration patterns, behavioral modification cascades. Within one generation, Mora explained, human protective instincts will have integrated into every major species' childcare system. Within 2 generations, species that have been at war for millennia will have a shared value system. Don't hurt the young. Ever. Nora shrugged. And this is bad because? Because, Council Leader Voth said quietly. The last time one species changed galactic culture this completely, it started the last war. The weight of that statement settled over the room. Reeves looked at Nora. They're afraid you'll unite the galaxy. By being nice to kids? By making it impossible not to be. Nora lay back, exhausted. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Welcome to galactic politics, Voth said. Outside, the cubs chirped in their sleep. Safe. Protected. Loved by a species that didn't share their biology but shared something more important. The willingness to take the shrapnel first. 3 weeks in medical. When Nora was finally released, Station Meridian 8 had transformed. Human staff in every youth facility. The cubs followed her everywhere, plus 3 more juveniles. And the parents, forming a protective guard of apex predators. This is my life now? Nora asked Dr. Vex. You saved their children. They'll never leave. New regulations. All youth facilities required human oversight. Humans received protective action immunity. Insurance companies created new categories for human instinctive response. Religious delegations wanted to study her. She refused. I'm not special. Any human would have done the same. Which was exactly what terrified them. Then the Council's offer. Director of Cross-Species Youth Protection. Galaxy-wide authority. Can I still teach kids about rocks? Nora asked. If you wish. Then sure, whatever. 6 months later, 60,000 humans worked in youth services across Council space. Nora's cubs, now adolescents, assisted her. Other species young gravitated to human staff instinctively. Incidents of juvenile harm dropped 78%. Scientists understood why. Predator species evolved to protect their young. Humans evolved to protect all young. Species at war negotiated peace because humans wouldn't let them fight near children. Nora's reaction. Cool, but can we get better art program funding? Security brought in the terrorist. He knelt before Nora. I've seen the cubs you saved. They're thriving. I was wrong. Yeah, no kidding. I believe the rhetoric about humans corrupting our youth. He looked at her guards. I nearly killed children because I was angry. You're serving time? 20 cycles. Educational rehabilitation. Good. Learn something. Do better. She paused. Tell the cubs you're sorry when you get out. The final scene came during a routine class. Nora teaching 30 juvenile aliens about geological formations. Her favorite subject. The one she'd wanted to teach before everything exploded. Literally. 30 different species. All learning together. Playing together. Sharing supplies and snacks and space without instinctive aggression. A young Thalorian, Crystal's still small, telepathic voice barely a whisper, raised a manipulator appendage. Teacher Nora? Yeah, Shimmer? Why do humans protect alien young? We are not your species. The classroom went completely silent. Other staff members stopped what they were doing. Parents watching from the observation gallery leaned forward. Council observers activated recording devices. Nora thought about it. About 3 weeks in medical. About death debts and prophecies. About 15,000 humans doing exactly what she'd done. About a galaxy restructuring itself around the radical idea that all children deserved protection. You know what I told the Council when they asked me that? She sat on her desk, casual. I said, because you're kids. And kids deserve to be safe. All of them. Doesn't matter what species, what planet, what your parents believe. You're young, you're learning, you're trying to figure out the universe. That's hard enough without worrying about getting hurt. She shrugged. Plus, you guys are pretty cool. I like hanging out with you. Shimmer processed this, crystals humming thoughtfully. So, humans protect because it is correct? We protect because we care. There's a difference. In the observation gallery, Ambassador Reeves turned to Council Leader Voth. They still don't understand it, do they? No, Voth admitted. They see tactical advantage, political strategy, evolutionary programming. But you understand? I am beginning to. Voth watched Nora return to her lesson. Cubs surrounding her. 30 juvenile aliens listening with rapt attention. Humans don't protect the young because it benefits them. They do it because they cannot imagine not doing it. Reeves nodded. That's the part that scares everyone. That's the part that will save us. The galaxy had been transformed by a human jumping in front of an explosion. Not because of training or strategy, but because children were in danger and she was nearby. The council tried to understand the logic. Nora taught cubs to share snacks and appreciate cool rocks. Both missed the other's point. The selfless ones weren't special. They were just human. And that was the most terrifying, wonderful thing the galaxy had discovered. Humans who protected because they cared, not because it benefited them. You couldn't negotiate with that. Couldn't weaponize it. Couldn't corrupt it. You could only accept it and hope some of that irrational protective instinct would rub off. And Nora still just wanted better funding for the art programs.